and then we dig into who she is a little bit. So here we are looking at the construction and the creation of the wrap dress. On one side of the wall, we can see the wrap dress from 1970 through to the present. You can see over time how it's changed to reflect the fashions and styles of the times. In the 1970s, you get this beautiful knit, you get the cuffs, you get the tie. In the 80s, you get a little bit more experimentation, reflecting a cleaner silhouette. 90s, the neckline's a little bit higher. 2000s, a return to a more sort of sensual silhouette here with the lips. And in the 2010s, we have a break. She's combining two different kinds of fabric and an A-line. And this contemporary piece is a fusion of different patterns she's used over the course of her career with a rather daring low back. So, what makes the wrap dress special? Well, it's easy to wear. Diane likes to say that she created the uniform for the working woman, right? At a time when women were entering the workforce in large numbers, though I should note women have always worked outside the home across history. But in the 1970s, you have a wave of women entering fields previously largely dominated by men. And the thing that was special about the wrap dress is that women's clothing for work in the 1970s was very modeled off of men's suiting. So you're looking at stiff necklines, skinnier ties, jackets. This was a dress made for curves on a woman's body. It was meant to be comfortable. It was also meant to be sensual. In this way, Diane is both part of the women's liberation and the sexual revolution. Across the hall, we can look a little bit more at the construction of the garment. So Diane learned about the art of printmaking and textiles from Albert Ferretti, who was a textile manufacturer in Italy. And here's a sample of some of the textiles she was working with. You can see already these prints that will impact her throughout her career. Now, what we became known as the wrap dress started as two separates. When she emigrated to New York, she brought some pieces with her. She used some of Ferretti's existing prints, but also created some of her own and had them cut into styles she thought an American consumer might really be interested in. So even though this looks like one continuous piece, it's a top and a skirt. She was watching television, and on television she saw Julie Nixon Eisenhower, Richard Nixon's daughter, defending her father, Richard Nixon, who was in the midst of the Watergate scandal on television. And she wasn't really interested in what Julie Nixon Eisenhower had to say. What she was interested in was the silhouette, right? She hadn't really imagined pairing the two separates together, the top and the skirt. And so from that, the wrap dress is born. Now, her business partner was also very excited about this because producing one finished piece is more cost effective than producing two finished pieces. Production ramped up on the garment. A year later, introduced collar and cuffs, and the very iconic silhouette of the wrap dress was born. Now, this is not one of Diane's archival pieces. This is what's known as a toile, and you might also hear it referred to as muslin, which refers to the cotton muslin it was made from. It's a prototype. It's meant to give you a sense of a garment. And so this is a cotton toile where you can see the cuffs, the collar, how it all comes together, and we've broken it down on the label for you if you're really interested in garment construction. At the same time, she licensed the pattern of her dress so that it was available both to a consumer as a finished product in a department store and to the home sewist who can make their own. This pattern was actually reissued this year in honor of the 50th anniversary of the wrap dress, and we have some pictures of that in gallery as well. We're in this subsection of the wrap dress, and we're looking at two different things. We're looking at Diane's conversations and inspirations she's having across time, and we're also looking at Diane in conversation with other women designers. So first we'll start with some of those inspirations. if you've noticed, the flow of her garments has this beautiful drapery. Now this is speaking to Greco-Roman drapery, which is a big influence for her. We've juxtaposed the draping of her garments against this sculpture so you can really see how the two speak to each other. And if I could ask, if you could hold conversation until we move to the next room, it kind of trips me up in my own head. It's too busy in there as it is. So over here, we look at Diane in conversation with the kimono. Now the kimono is a huge source of inspiration for Diane, and I'm really excited because at the Skirball's presentation we have an incredibly rare kimono. I should say two incredibly rare kimonos. One has been graciously loaned to us from the Fashion Institute of Design and Merchandising. It is made with banana fibers. It's a banana textile, which is very, very rare. It's very, very delicate. It's this kind of almost tea-colored kimono. It's a summer kimono, which is why it's so lightweight and has shorter sleeves here. And next to it, well, I should say two down from it, is a kimono of Diane's that she bought at an antiques market in the 1970s. So we have this 19th century kimono in conversation with one from her own collection and a garment she's designed, so you can see not only the wrap that reflects that, but how it all comes together in her imagination, fusing the Greco-Roman drapery with the tie and the folds of the kimono to create Diane's wrap. Now, Diane would be the first to say she's not the first inventor of a wrap garment. She's just someone who made it very, very popular, right? She struck at the right time. Across the room from us, this first garment you see in white, this is Claire McCardle. And this was Claire McCardle's popover dress. And I think this is really special in conversation with Diane because Claire McCardle was designing for the woman of the 1950s. She wanted something you could put on in your home. She talked in her autobiography that so often she was getting dressed for a dinner or to go to the grocery store, and everything had zippers. And if anyone's ever tried to dress themselves with zippers in their own home, knows it's a whole ordeal. And by the time you're done, you're sweaty and you don't look right for your guests. So this dress was meant to be popped over. It was meant to tie at the waist and be one piece that was easy to wear. You could clean your house in it, you could go to the store in it, and you'd look great. And if you look at this, it bears a resemblance to Diane's silhouette. Now Diane is working with jersey. It's a different material. It's a little more sensual. It hugs the body. Its move and ease is different. But the idea is there, right? In 1950, Claire McCardle is saying this will carry you to the grocery store and your dinner party. And in 1973, Diane von Furstenberg is saying this will carry you to the boardroom, right? So it's a different conversation about where women are in society at that moment and the roles they're taking on. We've got some other very special pieces in conversation with each other that are unique to the Skirball's presentation. One that I'm very, very excited about and is being accessioned into our collection is this, it's this beautiful Donna Karan cashmere knit piece. It's from her first line, 7 Easy Pieces. And she was saying that all a woman needs are 7 garments to get them through their workday to carry them amongst their many roles. Now, Donna Karan is a Jewish American designer, and she's also a yogi. Yoga is central to her daily life and the way she views herself in the world, and so it's a unitard, right? So we see who she is and how she moves about in the world influence her design. And one of the things I love most is it's got a big, giant pocket. Yeah. Now, we've broken this conversation of women designers across time. You'll see someone from the 1950s standing next to someone from the 1920s, thinking about the way women design for women. And what Diane likes to say is that when men design for women, often they're making a costume. But when women design for women, they're making clothes. It's a little bit different. The other 2 garments, if you'll indulge me, that I want to highlight in this room, this staff doctor and dentist She paid people a living wage. She paid people for a sweep of garments. Behind is the print, and then you see the living garment, right? So you can see Diane took time to really call herself a fashion designer. For a long time, she just referred to herself as a designer because she was thinking of the textile. And so here we see the marriage of the textile and the dress together, fully embodying Diane as a fashion designer. I want to talk a little bit about this one. This is one of my favorite. This is what she calls her drip print. It's influenced, as you can see, by Jackson Pollock. So it's mirroring his drip paintings. She's a big lover of art. She loves abstract expressionism. But what I love about this is Betty Friedan owned this dress, and we have a picture of that in the exhibition. So we've talked about Diane being a lifelong feminist, of her garments being the uniform of the 1970s woman, of women's liberation, and you can see that in a dress worn by Betty Friedan, one of the big lights of second wave feminism. We also have Diane in a jumpsuit here in a similar print, lounging under Andy Warhol's paintings of her. As you left the room, maybe you noticed that we have that print on a mannequin, so they're in conversation with each other. Behind, we have these beautiful color banks. I'll give you a little bit of inside baseball about the exhibition. Diane uses these color banks to help her design. And you can see the name that Pantone calls them, and then the name that Diane has sometimes renamed them for herself to help her in her design thinking. So sometimes they're the same thing, but for example, Pantone's Dutch blue is dusk blue for Diane. They've often taken on a nature name that she's given them. Pool green becomes summer turquoise. And when we were framing these and we'd gotten the pieces from her archive, which we were given generous access to her archives in Connecticut, and we had a lay of the land in terms of what we wanted to present in gallery, we had this all framed up. Diane saw it and she said, "You have to let me write on all of them." And we said, "No, Diane, they're framed." And she's like, "I know, but I want to give more of my inspiration on here." And I'm sharing this story because Diane is always creating. She's always thinking, she's always designing, and you really get a sense of that behind you here when we're looking at her nature prints. Now, we've intentionally played with the chronology here. In some cases, you have a dress. That botanical print at the top is from 1975. It's standing next to a dress from 2008, right? So we've broken chronology here, but we've grouped them together so you can see how her conversations and interests in nature evolve across time. But below, on the base of these platforms, are a series of pictures. These are pictures from Diane's camera roll. Diane takes pictures when she's traveling the world, she saves them, and she uses them to help her in her design process. One of my favorites in this grouping is actually a very early print, right here, this printed cotton dress from 1975. And when we were installing the exhibition, a lot of us were looking at these and saying, you know, I think this is cracked earth, right? Can't you see that? She's got the pictures of cracked earth. She loves that kind of cracking and breaking, that vulnerability in nature. Diane talks a lot about vulnerability and thinks actually being vulnerable is a sign of strength. When she was in here, she said, "No, that's a cauliflower." So she's always thinking, she's always designing, she's always surprising. But you can see here how the wrap has changed across time again. These are inspired by animal prints. Some have lower necklines, some higher, but the form remains the same, right? It's this beautiful wrap dress taking in natural prints and motifs across time. Over here we have one of her more famous natural motifs, and that is her green twig. And you can see we have a very early version of the green twig this is the red twig from the 1970s. Then we have a version from the 20-teens, this beautiful dress she wore to a Met Gala. And you can tell it's been lived in by her because it's got a little hole right there. And then we have a version from the aughts. So again, she's playing with forms and ideas across time, but art and nature are central to who she is. And the artists she loves, she really loves. She'll return to their ideas in different ways. You can see that here with her Andy Warhol dresses. Andy Warhol was a friend. He obviously painted her, was interested in her, and she's played with his designs across time and used it with some of her best-known prints, the twig, and again, the keychain print here. She's collaborated and brought them together. So take a moment, enjoy this. Here we're going to talk a little bit about her family, and we're also going to talk about the theme of freedom. Now, freedom means a couple different things to Diane. It means the freedom to be in charge, to be a woman, to be powerful, to live many different lives. It means the freedom to create yourself in the way that you want to. It means the freedom to travel, which we look at across the hall in petite valise, which means little bag in French. But it also is ingrained in her genetics, in her family story of her mother, Lily Naimes, who is a Holocaust survivor and was a member of the resistance in Belgium. Her mother was at 3 different camps and was on a death march, was very, very frail, and her grandmother, Lily Naimes' mother, had to feed her from a dropper to nurse her back to health. And she was told she was engaged, that she could not have a child, that she could eventually, but it was very dangerous for her because she was so underweight. And she ended up becoming pregnant, and she gave birth to Diane, and she said that Diane was the torch, her torch of freedom that gave her back her life. It makes me emotional every time I think about it. I can't read the letters to you. You have to read them yourself. But the story is really, really moving. Diane's mother was arrested by the Gestapo and wrote these with a match and threw them out of the truck. Never knew that her family got them. Oh, makes me... Anyway, read the letters. They're quite powerful. Her mother told her, fear is not an option and you could never be a victim, and that sense of freedom was central to Diane. It's really how she imagines herself in the world across many different ways of designing and thinking. We also are very lucky. We have this video of Lily here talking about her family, her experience in the camps. It's very, very moving. Lily was very involved with the raising of Diane's children, was a very devoted grandmother, and it's just a really beautiful story. The end cap to that is that Diane, because of her mother, her experience as an immigrant, being her mother's torch of freedom, has always identified with the Statue of Liberty. And it's interesting because illustrators started to connect the two of them in advertisements in the 1980s. So here you can see with the evolution of that idea, Diane and the Statue of Liberty, which culminated in Diane being the godmother of the Statue of Liberty for the creation, the new Statue of Liberty Museum. She raised over $100 million for the museum and was given pieces of the original Statue of Liberty. I got a question recently which said, so they just ripped some off and gave it to her? No. In 1986, the Statue of Liberty underwent a restoration, and these were too rusty to remain on Lady Liberty. So they were given these armature bars as a thank you for raising money for the museum. So before I let you go in it, they're easy to wear, they're easy to move in, they are meant to be sensuous and also serious. This is a businesswoman. And we can see it here in clothing she's designed specifically for travel. She wants people to engage with the world. She's interested in women everywhere. So take a look and we'll meet in American Dream. Section of the exhibition really looks at Diane's experience of the American dream. It looks at her as a businesswoman. Before Diane learned the art of cutting and printmaking in Italy, she studied economics. And I think that really comes through in how she's marketed her products and how she's marketed herself. She started on the American market at a time when retail spaces were really changing. Inflation was very high. Production in the United States had largely left and gone other places. So she entered the American market at a really interesting time and was very clever in terms of how she marketed herself and how she connected with her customers. She went on a whirlwind tour of the United States with her makeup artist, Gigi, who now is the main makeup artist for many David Fincher movies. So they got their start together. And they traveled the US, and she said, you know, she'd only heard about these places. And she wasn't being ironic. She was like, Kansas was exotic to me. I'd never been there. I'd never thought about it. And she'd meet with customers. They'd advertise it in newspapers. Here you can see How You Can Look Great, 1976 mall fashion show. She'd meet with women. She'd tie the wrap dress for them, and she'd give them advice tailored to their daily life. One of the things I love about Diane is that she would say, you know, you shouldn't spend more than 7 minutes doing your makeup, because the purpose of the dress and the purpose of feeling good is to give yourself time, right? The busier you are in your life, the more you realize that time is what's luxury. Time is what's valuable. I was worried that was me, but it wasn't, thank goodness. That's my deepest fear, is being like, whose phone? And it's me. Sorry. So it was the ability to give women more time in their everyday life. And makeup and advice was a part of that. So she toured the United States with her makeup artist. We have press clippings here that explore how she was marketed, how she described herself. We look across the hall here at the relationship she developed with her customers, her book tours, but she also developed relationships with the models she worked with. And they kind of became emblematic of the brand. And different models at different times. The model Gia was used in her advertising. Cindy Crawford is a longtime friend, someone who's been used in her advertising over time. So take a look. This is just a sample of the press that she's received, but you'll notice the publications are very different. From The Beauty of Grooming, right, to Town and Country magazine. I actually didn't know this before I worked on this exhibition, but Town and Country magazine is one of the oldest magazines in the United States, and she's the only woman who's been on the cover 3 times. So we have a little sample of how she's marketed herself, and then we'll meet here at the end of the exhibition before we move on to the final section, philanthropy. Same exaggerated look. You know, I realize it makes more sense for us to meet in the final section, philanthropy. There's a little more room. So as we walk there, most about is empowering other women. Now she also adds, no one knows how long winter will be, because Diane has a very good sense of humor. But Diane is most interested now, along with designing for women to feel good, in allowing women everywhere to have access to the lives they want to lead. So what does that mean? Well, she has had the DVF Awards now for 10 years. And these DVF Award winners get very sizable grants. I believe it's about $100,000 to pursue their philanthropic work that they're doing in their communities all over the world. And this work is difficult work. One of the women who is an honoree, and you can listen to her, she's on the screen now, talks about helping women who were forced into the Yazidi sex trade. She is interested in reaching women globally. One of the honorees has a textile factory in Detroit that employs unhoused people to become textile workers, and some of the garments they sew are sleeping bags for people who are still unhoused. You know, she has a global interest in allowing people everywhere to live the kind of lives they want to lead. And so this section looks at that. It looks at the kind of different philanthropic work she's been involved in. And we highlight in particular this year's DVF Award winners, which just happened. So take a look at the video. There's some incredible stories here. Be sure to take a picture with Diane on these stairs. And I should note that this exhibition is up for a year, which is really special. Textile exhibitions normally can't be up that long because textiles are fragile under light. And so we're really lucky that we can have it for this length of time. We also will be making a couple changes halfway through the run, so be on the lookout for that. I don't want to promise what it is exactly because then I'm forced to do it. But I can say that we will very likely, from a secret between you and me, we'll very likely have her newest line where the crossword print is. So hopefully that will be there in 6 months, but I can tell you for sure we'll be making a couple other tweaks and changes coming through with the originating curator, Nicola and Diane. They were like, well, you know, for uniforms, we could switch this out. I think we have this. So we'll be making a couple tweaks as the show lives on. But I thank you so much for your time, for celebrating with us today, for coming on all 3 of these incredible tours, all 4 of these incredible tours. Thank you so much for being a part of our Skirball community. So happy to answer any questions.
Have the dress on you, what it looks like. Absolutely.